What's going on, and crew? My name is Andrew. Welcome back to a brand new, exciting video. Tucker! Tucker, want your toy? Go get it! Good boy, Tucker. Good boy. Mwah. Anyways, guys, Tucker and I are hoping you're having a fantastic day. Today, I've got a pretty exciting video coming for you guys, but do you know how I keep complaining about the weather? It's like a common thread through the past few of my videos. Well, the weather is still unbelievably terrible. It's like it's not even funny. It's not funny anymore. Look at this! Look at this! It's not showing up too well on camera, but it is raining out there, and I no like it. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing up the weather once again is because it's making it pretty difficult for me to film like cinematic intros, film vlogs, film tutorials, and stuff like that. So hopefully the weather will get its act together and I'll have some new intros and stuff like that soon. So in this video, I'm gonna be going over 2 different techniques for actually filming a hyperlapse, and then 2 different techniques for actually stabilizing your hyperlapse, and hopefully I will teach you guys everything you really need to know about how to make a hyperlapse. And right now, I'm gonna start getting ready, and then once the weather clears up a bit, I'll head outside and we'll start working on this hyperlapse. So I'll catch you guys once the weather clears up. Alright guys, so I'm outside now, and the first thing you want to do when you start to shoot hyperlapses is find your locations. And what you want to look for is sort of like a large structure. Most of the time it's going to be like a building or something like that. But I've actually shot like flagpoles before, or trees, so really anything that sort of just sticks out. In this case, I'm using this telephone pole because it's kind of just the best thing we could find. But what you're really looking for is just something that sticks out. The next thing you want to do is make sure you're shooting on RAW. That's going to give you the most flexibility in post, and then turn on grid display on your camera. Almost every camera has this. I'm pretty sure just every camera does have this. It's a little grid that you can turn on or off in your menu settings. Most of the time it's going to be like a rule of thirds grids, but there's a couple of different options for you to choose from. If you guys have a Canon camera and you have Magic Lantern installed, you can also put your own custom grids in, so that's just something to consider. Once you have your grid on, you want to use that grid to line up reference points for your hyperlapse. So right now I'm looking through my viewfinder and I have my grid turned on, and I'm going to choose the top of that telephone pole over there to be my reference point. It's going to be where I line up the center of my grid on top of that telephone pole. Now the other thing you want to make sure you do is you want to have a horizontal reference point. For Sony cameras, there's a leveler, a gyroscope leveler that you can turn on inside of your camera settings. That way it always tells you when your camera is perfectly leveled or off axis. But for cameras that don't have this option, like the Canon I'm using right now, what you want to do is choose one of the vertical grid lines and line that up with a vertical line on your structure. So right now I'm shooting a telephone pole, so I'm going to line up the side of my grid with the sign of that telephone pole. That way there's no shake like this because of the position reference point, and that way there's no shake on a horizontal level because of either the gyroscope leveler or the vertical reference line. So now you've got all the settings turned on and everything like that, and it's time just to start shooting the hyperlapse. What I like to do is line up my reference point, so I'll line up the position reference point and the vertical line reference point, take the picture, and then I take one small step forward. I go just like that. I make sure my left foot goes directly in front of my back foot, and then I move forward. Take another picture and do it once again. So it's just little baby steps like that, and you just keep slowly moving forward. And that's pretty much it, guys. Now keep in mind that for a video, it's about 24 frames or pictures for 1 second of footage. So when you're shooting a hyperlapse or a time lapse, to get 4 seconds of footage, that would be 96 pictures you'd have to take. Generally, when I'm shooting a hyperlapse, I like to do about 120 pictures just to stay on the safe side. Just to keep in mind, it's always important to have too many pictures rather than too few pictures. The more pictures you have in post, the more flexibility you also have. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's how you take the standard classic hyperlapse. Alright guys, so now it's time to talk about the second way to hyperlapse, and this is sort of the new way people are doing it most of the time, and that's the gimbal hyperlapse. What you're going to do is very similar. You're just going to make sure that your grid is turned on and then just slowly walk forward, something like this. You're going to want to go nice and steady, nice and smooth, make sure that the camera stays facing the same position. You're not going to have to worry about any shake on this axis because it's obviously leveled, and you're just going to keep slowly moving forward. Yeah, so it's just something like that. Some people prefer these kinds of hyperlapses. I really just think you need to use them in the right sort of circumstances. These are definitely more run and gun. It just depends on the circumstance you want to use them. It's pretty straightforward though. Just line up your camera and slowly walk forward. Alright guys, so I'm back inside now. I'm done with the shooting process of this hyperlapse. I've shown you guys how to shoot the classic form of a hyperlapse. I've shown you guys how to shoot a gimbal hyperlapse. So now it's time to talk about how to stabilize them. So there are two different ways to stabilize a hyperlapse. The first way is just to use the classic warp stabilizer, and the second way is to use the tracking panel and do it manually. Both of these stabilization methods have their time and place. You just need to test both of them and see which one works the best for each clip. The first thing we're going to talk about is the warp stabilizer effect. So I'm going to start off by opening up After Effects. Now keep in mind you can use warp stabilizer in Premiere Pro if that's your ideal software, but since I'm working with raw photos, I find the workflow much easier in After Effects. So After Effects is loaded up. I'm going to make a new project, hit Control-I on PC or Command-I on Mac, and then I'm going to navigate over to this tutorial lapse folder. Now when working with raw photos, there's something called camera raw sequence. It's essentially when you click on one photo and then the computer reads the sequence and sees that this photo is a part of a larger picture, the hyperlapse. And if you check this box, it says Sequence Options, Camera Raw Sequence. It means when you hit import, it's going to import all of those photos as one whole combined sequence. Also, since these are raw, it brings up this Lightroom panel, essentially. It's technically not Lightroom, but it pretty much is. And it just allows you to manipulate the raw data of this photo. I'm going to boost up the vibrance a bit, something like that. Just something like that, and then hit OK. That's going to import your photos into the project panel and then drag them down to this create a new composition button, release, and it creates a new composition. I know, shocker. Since it is in RAW, I changed my render quality to quarter because if it wasn't, this would take so much time. And now I'm going to apply warp stabilizer by right-clicking, going up to track and stabilizer, and selecting warp stabilizer VFX. And now we just have to wait it out because it takes a long time to render raw photos. Alright guys, so it just finished. Let's play through and see what it looks like. Boom! Just like that. Warp Stabilizer does an amazing job stabilizing your hyperlapses. It can take a little bit of time, but it's so simple and it looks so good. Now you guys should know that using Warp Stabilizer is like flipping a coin. Sometimes it works and sometimes it looks awful. So you just have to try it out and see if it works. In this particular scenario, it worked really well. I have no issues with this at all. But for the sake of this tutorial, I want to show you guys what to do for the other 50% of the time, what you should do when Warp Stabilizer just doesn't work out. So to do this, I'm going to select the clip, go over to the Warp Stabilizer VFX, and just delete that. Now I'd like to direct you guys over to this panel on the far right called the Tracker panel. If you guys don't have this panel, go over to Window, and where it says Tracker, make sure there's a check next to it. What we're going to be doing is hitting Stabilize Motion. Now the first thing we're going to be tracking is just the position, making sure the position of the clip does not change. It doesn't go up or down, left or right, or anything like that. I'm actually going to go back to my composition and change the resolution to full so we can see our clip a little bit better. And now what I'm going to look for is something called points of contrast. Points of contrast are really just any group of pixels that kind of stands out from your clip. So for instance, I think a good tracking point or point of contrast would be this little dot right here on the side of the pole. I don't think After Effects will have too much trouble hanging on to that because it stands out so much from its surroundings. Now what I'm going to do is go down to this panel, and where it says Analyze, I'm going to move it one frame forward and see how After Effects responds. Okay, well it did a terrible job. It just jumped and it completely lost track of that point of contrast. So clearly it's not very easy for After Effects to hold on to. So I'm going to go back and try a different point. I'm going to try this little blue dot right there. And we're going to see how it does this time. Once again, it did a terrible job. It completely lost it in just a second. So we're going to try another one. I'm going to go up to the top of this pole right there. And let's try it. Nope. Okay, there we go. That was better. Better. Okay, so now we've got one. Seems like After Effects isn't having too much trouble hanging on to it, so we're going to hit Analyze Forward and play it through. It's still struggling, but I think this is the best we're gonna get. As you guys can see, it lost the point right there, so we go back a few frames, change it, and then we'll keep playing it through. Okay guys, so I just finished tracking through this, and then I hit apply to X and Y, and then I saved it. One more thing I'm gonna do to try to save this clip is I'm gonna go back over to track motion, and instead of doing position, this time we're gonna do rotation. So now we have these two different track points because you need two track points to track rotation, and I'm gonna drag this down to about there. Now I'm gonna play it through and do the exact same thing and track this pole. Alright guys, so I just finished tracking it through. Let's play it and see what it looks like. That does not look great at all. I have no idea why. There's got to be just something with the math that goes on behind these stabilizers, but sometimes, rarely, but sometimes these trackers just do not work. This is definitely a usable hyperlapse, but it's a no-brainer that the warp stabilizer is definitely the way to go in this particular scenario. But all the same, I have used this method many different times on many different hyperlapses. Once again, just try out warp stabilizer. If that works, then great. But if not, then move on to the second method, the advanced manual tracking method. If you guys have any questions about this, be sure to comment down below, and I think that's pretty much it.
Hey buddy, Saki's just stretched out right here. He doesn't even care. That's the thing I like about Saki, he just does not care. Not a care in the world, dude.
Alright everybody, so I think that is about it for this ultimate hyperlapse tutorial. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thank you all so much for watching this video, it really does mean a lot, and I'll catch you guys on Wednesday. Peace.